Hi. Yes, I'm looking to register a new member of my security team. Certainly, sir, replied a bored-sounding voice. Do you have their training certification number and state guard license? No, I admitted. He's new and sort of unconventional. Unconventional how? Well, for starters, he has 4 legs and quite a bit of fur. A long pause. Sir, are you trying to register a dog? He prefers Canine Asset Protection Specialist, I clarified. Okay, let's talk about dogs. Specifically, my dog, Barney. And let's talk about neighbors. Specifically, my neighbor, Carol Peterson. Mix the two together in the tightly wound petri dish of suburban living. Add a dash of HOA absurdity. And you get, well, you get this story. The story of how Carol's vendetta against my beloved, slobbery best friend led me down a rabbit hole of bureaucratic loopholes, questionable online purchases, and resulted in my 110-pound Bernese Mountain Dog becoming the officially registered, sort of, head of asset protection for B&M Neighborhood Watch Associates, LLC, Barney. Where do I even begin? Imagine a furry avalanche of enthusiasm, perpetually optimistic, convinced that every stranger is a potential belly rub provider, and every falling leaf is cause for investigation. He's a burner through and through, big, goofy, gentle as a lamb, unless you happen to be a particularly enticing squeaky toy, in which case, may God have mercy on your plush soul. His bark? Less ferocious guard dog, more muffled woofle oof, usually directed at suspicious-looking garden gnomes or his own tail. He sheds enough fur to knit a second dog every week, drools with impressive volume, and considers naps a competitive sport. A menace? Absolutely. To unattended shoes, low-hanging bagels, and anyone trying to maintain a fur-free existence. But aggressive, please. Barney's idea of aggression is leaning his entire body weight against your legs until you provide adequate ear scratches. We were in the backyard one glorious Saturday afternoon, engaged in our usual ritual. Operation Retrieve the Slightly Slimy Tennis Ball. Barney, despite his bulk, could achieve surprising bursts of speed, usually followed by an equally surprising lack of coordination, resulting in him skidding past the ball, tumbling in a flurry of black, white, and brown fur, then looking up with bewildered delight, as if this was the intended maneuver all along. He'd trot back, ball proudly and moistly in mouth, tail wagging so hard his whole back end swayed. Pure, unadulterated joy on 4 paws. Good boy, Barn, I praised, accepting the slobbery offering. Excellent tactical role. That's when I saw her. Carol Peterson, appearing over the shared fence line like a disapproving garden gnome herself. Her lips were pursed so tight they threatened to disappear entirely. Her eyes, narrowed slits of judgment, scanned my yard, lingering on Barney, then on the tennis ball slime drying on my hand. Then back to Barney, who, sensing attention, let out a hopeful woofle. Having fun, Carol? I called out, forcing cheerfulness. Some of us, she replied, her voice tight as a banjo string. Appreciate a quiet afternoon without incessant barking and dog-related commotion. Incessant? Barney had woofled exactly once. Commotion? He was playing fetch. He's just playing, Carol, I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. Being a dog. There are ordinances, Mark, she sniffed, adjusting the collar of her perfectly pressed blouse, on a Saturday afternoon, naturally. Noise ordinances, leash laws. Perhaps you should review them. She gave Barney one last look that could freeze lava and vanished back into her pristine, dog-free existence. I sighed. This wasn't new. Carol had never liked Barney. Maybe it was his size. Maybe it was the occasional bark. Maybe it was the time he'd managed to tunnel under the fence, a feat of engineering I still haven't figured out, and showed up on her doorstep, tail wagging, hoping for treats, leaving muddy paw prints on her welcome mat. Whatever the reason, she viewed him as a furry blight on her otherwise perfect suburban landscape. Her complaints to the HOA about his excessive shedding near the property line and intimidating size were legendary, though usually dismissed by even the long-suffering Mr. Abernathy. But this time felt different. Her glare had a new intensity, a glint of determination. Uh-oh. The other shoe dropped 2 days later. Not an HOA letter, but an official City of Alexandria animal control van parked curbside. My stomach plummeted. Officer Miller, looking tired before he even reached my door, sighed as I opened it. "Mr. Johnson? Mark Johnson?" "Yes." I braced myself. "Officer Miller, Animal Control. We received a complaint regarding a dog at this address." "Barney?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "What's he supposedly done now? Shed aggressively?" Miller consulted his notepad, his weariness palpable. "Complaint alleges frequent uncontrolled barking constituting a public nuisance, also aggressive lunging behavior observed at the fence line, and possible failure to maintain adequate control." My jaw dropped. "Aggressive lunging? Officer, he wags at the fence. He thinks everyone walking by is coming to see him. And the barking? He woofles when the mail comes. It's hardly uncontrolled." "Look, Mr. Johnson," Miller sighed, clearly having heard similar denials 1,000 times. "I have to follow up. It's procedure. Can I just see the dog? Check his license, rabies tag?" I nodded mutely and called Barney. He trotted to the door, saw Officer Miller, and immediately went into full new friend mode, tail whipping back and forth like a metronome on fast forward, ears perked, big goofy grin on his face. He tried to shove his massive head into Miller's hand, emitting happy huffing sounds. Aggressive lunging? Seriously? Miller knelt, expertly checked Barney's tags while deftly avoiding the worst of the enthusiastic face-licking. "Okay, tags are current. Rabies is up to date." He stood up, surveying the utterly non-threatening fluffball, now attempting to present him with a slimy tennis ball. "He seems friendly." "He is friendly," I insisted. "Carol Peterson across the street just hates dogs." Miller's expression didn't change, but I saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He knew Carol. Oh, he knew her well. "Right," he said, closing his notepad. "Well, technically, the barking could be considered a nuisance if it's persistent. Just try to keep him quiet, especially early morning or late evening. Make sure the gate's always latched securely. I'll file this as complaint investigated, warning issued." He handed me a small leaflet on responsible pet ownership, gave Barney a final, almost sympathetic pat, and trudged back to his van. I watched him drive away, then looked across the street. Carol was standing at her window, arms crossed, a small, undeniably smug smirk on her face. She'd done it. She'd weaponized animal control against my gentle giant. That evening, I was a wreck, pacing the living room, ranting, replaying the visit in my head. "She called him aggressive, Lisa," I fumed, stopping to glare out the window towards Carol's darkened house. "Barney, the dog whose greatest ambition in life is to achieve a perfect state of belly-rub-induced bliss. How dare she?" Lisa, ever the pragmatist, tried to soothe me, while simultaneously trying to defer the sofa cushion Barney had just vacated. "Okay, deep breaths, Mark. Miller knew it was bogus. It was just a warning. Maybe just bring Barney inside when Carol's out gardening? Or work on the quiet command?" Quiet command? He thinks quiet means bark softer. And why should we have to tiptoe around her ridiculous phobias? This isn't about noise, Lisa. It's about control. She wants to dictate every aspect of this neighborhood, right down to whether my dog is allowed to exist happily in his own yard. It's harassment, an attack on my family. Barney is family. "I know he is," Lisa said gently. "But escalating things with Carol never ends well. Remember the Great Wind Chime War of 22? I shuddered. Best not to remember that. This is different, I insisted. This is about Barney's honor, his reputation. He's been slandered. Lisa sighed. Okay, Captain Ahab. What's your plan? You can't exactly file a defamation suit on behalf of the dog. No, I said slowly, the gears beginning to turn as I stared out at Carol's perfectly ordered, sterile lawn. But maybe I can change the narrative. Change his status. How do you protect someone from frivolous complaints? You give them official cover. You make them seem necessary, important, untouchable. What if Barney wasn't just Mark Johnson's big, goofy dog? What if he was something more? My fingers flew to my laptop. Dog jobs? Working dog classifications. Guard dog regulations. The usual stuff yielded nothing useful for a dog whose primary skill was competitive napping. Service dogs. Absolutely not. Unethical, illegal, and Barney wasn't trained for that. Emotional support animal? Maybe, but the rules were tightening, and it didn't feel official enough. Then, buried deep in the search results, I saw links related to private security, licensing, personnel. What if Barney wasn't a pet, but personnel? Security personnel? It sounded official. It sounded important. It sounded like something that would drive Carol Peterson absolutely, incandescently insane. A slow grin spread across my face. Lisa, I called out, already typing furiously. How do you feel about becoming co-founder of a new LLC? The quest to officially designate Barney as security personnel turned into a journey through the looking glass of bureaucracy and the wild west of the internet. It began, logically enough, with actual security companies. My first call, "Hi, yes, I'm looking to register a new member of my security team." "Certainly, sir," replied a bored-sounding voice. "Do you have their training certification number and state guard license?" No, I admitted. He's new and sort of unconventional." "Unconventional how?" "Well, for starters, he has 4 legs, and quite a bit of fur." A long pause. "Sir, are you trying to register a dog?" "He prefers canine asset protection specialist," I clarified. Click. Okay, maybe not that route. Next, I explored the murky world of online registries. Service dog sites were a hard no. That felt deeply wrong. But then I found them. Websites promising official-looking ID cards and vests for working dogs, assistance animals, therapy companions, and even just in-training pets. All for a modest fee and 0 actual verification. Perfect. I found one. WorkingDogRegistry.biz. Sounded totally legit, right? Uploaded Barney's goofiest photo, filled in his details. Breed, Bernese Mountain Dog, special skills, napping, perimeter sniffing, unrestrained affection. Paid $49.95 via PayPal and boom! Confirmation email received. Asset Barney's official ID card was on its way. But an ID card alone wasn't enough. I needed corporate structure. Back to the state secretary's website. Filled out the online form for a limited liability company. Name? B&M Neighborhood Watch Associates, LLC. Registered agent, Mark Johnson. Primary business activity, residential observation and low-level presence deterrence. Purpose? To annoy Carol Peterson. Okay, I didn't write that last part. Another $50 fee. Filed, approved within 24 hours. I printed the certificate. It looked surprisingly official. Now for the gear. Amazon became my quartermaster. One bright red dog vest, size XXL, with bold white Velcro-backed letters, SECURITY. One ridiculously shiny plastic special agent badge that squeaked when you squeezed it. And, from a cheap online printing service, one weather-resistant sign. Warning, Registered security personnel on duty. Property monitored by B&M Neighborhood Watch Associates, LLC. The day the vest arrived, I presented it to Lisa with a flourish. Her reaction was predictable. "Oh, Mark, please, no, you actually bought it." "It's official," I declared, holding it up. "Command presence." "He looks," she said, eyeing the slightly too small neck opening, "like an overgrown bumblebee who joined a biker gang." I ignored her, coaxing Barney into the vest. He sniffed it suspiciously, tried to bite the Velcro, then stood there looking utterly baffled, his massive fluffiness barely contained by the red fabric. The security letters stretched awkwardly across his broad back. I clipped the squeaky badge onto his collar. He immediately tried to lick the shiny plastic. "Perfect," I declared. "Ready for duty." Barney responded by lying down and promptly falling asleep. The next morning was the grand rollout. First, the sign. I carefully zip-tied it to the front gate, positioned perfectly according to HOA guidelines, naturally. Then, I snapped the leash onto Barney's collar, badge gleaming, vest slightly askew, and opened the door. "Time for patrol, Agent B." Our walk was different. Heads turned. People watering lawns paused, squinting. A group of kids on bikes did double takes. "Whoa, is that dog a cop?" one whispered loudly. Mrs. Gable, out tending her roses, saw us and let out a delighted cackle. "Well, look at Agent Barney, keeping us all safe. You tell him, handsome." She slipped him a treat, which he accepted with unprofessional enthusiasm. Then we passed Carol's house. She was, predictably, out front, meticulously edging her lawn with tools that looked surgically precise. She saw Barney, saw the vest, saw the badge. Her eyes widened. Her mouth formed a perfect O of disbelief, then snapped shut into a thin line of pure fury. She dropped her edging tool. I gave her my best imitation of a crisp, professional security guard nod. "Morning, Carol," I said, my voice deliberately level. "Asset is performing routine perimeter check. Sector clear." I walked on, whistling nonchalantly, Barney ambling beside me, happily sniffing every interesting blade of grass, completely unaware of the silent declaration of war his ridiculous red vest represented. Life with Security Chief Barney commenced. His duties primarily consisted of demonstrating advanced napping techniques on the porch, enthusiastically greeting anyone who came within tail-wagging distance, and conducting thorough olfactory surveys of the yard. The security vest became his standard uniform for outdoor activities. The comedic contrast was glorious. Incident: squirrel breaches the bird feeder perimeter. Barney's response: opens one eye, sighs, goes back to sleep. My response: loudly for Carol's benefit. Asset maintaining strategic observation post. Non-threatening entity logged. Incident: mail carrier Cheryl arrives. Barney's response: ecstatic wiggling, tail-threatening structural damage to nearby porch railings, presentation of slimy toy. My response: asset performing positive identification and welcome protocol. Stand down, Agent B, stand down. Cheryl just laughed, scratched Barney behind the ears, and handed over the mail along with a customary biscuit. Rough day fighting crime, big guy. Incident: a plastic grocery bag blows across the lawn. Barney's response: sudden leap, frantic barking. Woof-a-loof-oof. Cautious sniffing, eventual attempt to eat the bag. My response: threat neutralized. Good work, Asset, bag secured. I leaned into it hard. Started calling Barney Asset or Agent B exclusively when outside. I'd conduct briefings by the fence line, pointing out potential vulnerabilities. Carol's prize-winning petunias. I bought a cheap clipboard and made meaningless check marks on it while Barney sniffed hydrants. Lisa threatened to disown me, but I saw her giggling when she thought I wasn't looking. Carol, naturally, saw none of the humor. The vest, the sign, my blatant absurdity. It was all a calculated insult. She started her counteroffensive. First, more calls to animal control. Officer Miller started screening them, but the sheer volume forced his hand. He called me, sounding like a man at the end of his rope. "Johnson, Miller, again. Mrs. Peterson now claims the dog is impersonating an official security officer, which she believes is a federal offense, and that the vest is inherently aggressive." "Officer," I said patiently, "he's not impersonating anyone. He is registered personnel with B&M Neighborhood Watch Associates, LLC, and the vest is clearly marked security, not police. As for aggressive, he's currently trying to cuddle with a decorative garden frog." A long, weary sigh came through the phone. "Just keep him leashed, Johnson, please." But Carol wasn't done. She complained to the HOA about the sign. Unauthorized commercial signage. Abernathy called, panicked. I emailed him back a copy of the LLC formation and a link to the HOA rule allowing small, tasteful home business identification signs. Checkmate. She complained the vest was garish and violated aesthetic codes. Abernathy actually tried to pursue that one until I pointed out the bylaws specified colors for houses and fences, not dog apparel. Double checkmate. Frustrated, Carol apparently decided direct action was needed. She started trying to prove Barney wasn't a real security dog. Mrs. Gable gleefully reported seeing Carol lurking by the fence after dark, making cat noises. Barney, according to Mrs. Gable, just wagged his tail hopefully. Another time, I saw Carol on her security camera. Yes, I have cameras, unlike some people, trying to toss a squeaky toy over the fence to distract the asset. Barney caught it mid-air, squeaked it triumphantly, then dropped it and went back to sleep. Her attempts were becoming increasingly desperate, and frankly hilarious. The inevitable escalation arrived via another certified letter. Formal compliance review meeting scheduled, at my house. Mandatory attendance, me, Abernathy, Carol, and Officer Miller, expert witness. Subject: ongoing complaints regarding Lot 12 K9, associated signage, and potential misrepresentation of security status. The final showdown was looming. The day arrived, fraught with suburban tension. We gathered in my living room, the setting for the great wind chime mediation of 22. Me, trying to look serious and professional. Lisa beside me, radiating waves of, "Please let this end quickly." Abernathy, clutching his binder of bylaws like a life raft. Carol, perched rigidly on the edge of the armchair, radiating pure, unadulterated fury. And Officer Miller, looking like he'd drawn the shortest straw at the Animal Control Office and deeply regretted his career choices. And Barney? Agent B himself was sprawled majestically on the area rug, occasionally twitching an ear or emitting a soft snore. His security vest was freshly brushed, his squeaky badge gleaming under the lamplight. He was the picture of, well, napping. Carol launched first, presenting her meticulously compiled dossier of Barney's alleged transgressions. "Exhibit A," she declared, holding up a blurry photo. "The asset, clearly asleep during designated on-duty hours." She followed with photos of Barney playing fetch, frivolous activity. Barney accepting a treat from Cheryl, compromising operational integrity. And Barney attempting to befriend her garden hose, potential destruction of property. "This entire security claim," she concluded, voice trembling with indignation, "is a farce, a mockery. He's just a large, undisciplined, and frankly odorous pet." I took a deep breath. Showtime. I calmly opened my own binder. "Thank you, Carol, for your observations. However, allow me to present documentation supporting Asset Barney's designated role." I produced the LLC certificate. B&M Neighborhood Watch Associates, LLC, registered with the state. I produced the laminated ID card. Agent Barney, Head of Asset Protection, registry number 734B. A number I'd completely made up. His duties primarily involve passive deterrence through visible presence, olfactory detection. His sense of smell is remarkably acute, and occasional auditory alerts. Abernathy looked back and forth between my binder and Carol's photos, his confusion palpable. But is it legal, Mark, to just call him security? I turned to the expert witness. Officer Miller, perhaps you can clarify the relevant ordinances? Miller sighed, shifting uncomfortably as Barney decided the officer's boots required immediate and thorough sniffing. As I've explained before, he said, trying gently to nudge Barney's large head away, animal control ordinances pertain to licensing, containment, noise, and aggressive behavior. If the dog, he gestured towards Barney, who was now attempting to lick his notepad, is not violating those specific codes, my jurisdiction is limited. Naming conventions for LLCs or novelty ID cards, he shrugged helplessly, are outside my purview. Carol was aghast. But the vest, the sign, it's deceptive. It implies authority. Does it? I asked innocently. It says security. Barney provides a sense of security, to me, to my family. The sign identifies the LLC associated with monitoring this property, all perfectly legal and compliant with HOA signage rules. Just then, Barney, having determined Miller's boots were not edible, ambled over to Carol. He sniffed her sensible shoes. Then, with a soft wuffle, he lowered his big, fluffy body onto her feet, rested his heavy head on her lap, and gazed up at her with soulful brown eyes, emitting a gentle sigh of contentment. The room froze. Carol looked down at the massive canine pinning her to the armchair as if an alien had just landed there. Her face cycled through shock, horror, and utter speechlessness. Officer Miller cleared his throat, trying desperately, and failing, to hide a smile. Abernathy looked like he might faint. Lisa pressed her lips together, her shoulders shaking slightly. Breaking the silence, Miller finally said, "Well, Mrs. Peterson, he doesn't seem particularly intimidating right now." That was pretty much the end of it. Carol couldn't form a coherent argument while Barney was using her lap as a pillow. The meeting dissolved in a haze of awkwardness and barely suppressed giggles, mostly mine and Lisa's. Carol extricated herself stiffly, shot Barney a look of pure venom, which he answered with a hopeful tail thump, and departed without another word. Abernathy mumbled something about needing to review the bylaws regarding lapdogs, and fled. The HOA went silent on the Barney front. The vest stayed. The sign stayed. B&M Neighborhood Watch Associates, LLC, continued its vital work of existing primarily on paper. Carol still glared, but the complaints stopped. Maybe she'd found a new nemesis. Maybe she'd realized the absurdity of her crusade. Or maybe she just couldn't handle the possibility of Barney deciding her lap was his favorite napping spot. Barney, of course, remained gloriously oblivious. His days continued, filled with important security tasks like chasing squirrels he never caught, barking at falling leaves, demanding belly rubs, and shedding on every available surface. He wore his security vest with the same goofy indifference he wore everything else. Mrs. Gable knitted him a tiny Agent B hat for Christmas, which he tolerated for approximately 30 seconds. Cheryl kept bringing extra biscuits. I sat on the porch swing one evening, beer in hand, watching Barney meticulously inspecting a dandelion. Lisa came out and sat beside me. "You know," she said, leaning her head on my shoulder, "for a while there, I thought you were completely off your rocker." "Just creatively addressing a problem," I grinned. "Uh-huh. So," she asked, a familiar warning tone in her voice, Now that Agent Barney has secured the perimeter, what ridiculous project are you dreaming up next? I looked at Barney, who had abandoned the dandelion and was now attempting to carry his favorite squeaky hedgehog, a tennis ball, and a large stick simultaneously, dropping each one in turn. Well, I mused, tapping my chin thoughtfully. B&M Neighborhood Watch Associates is technically an LLC. Maybe we need divisions. Asset. Barney is great for ground-level deterrence. But what about aerial surveillance? The cat does spend a lot of time on the roof. Lisa groaned and threw a sofa cushion at me. Barney, startled, dropped everything and barked once. A perfect, muffled woofle. Before grabbing the cushion and trotting proudly towards me, tail wagging, security vest slightly askew, asset reporting for duty, and maybe a treat